Good. Well, I was going to say good evening or good morning, but neither of those might apply whenever anyone's watching, so. Good time. Hello. Time for a work in progress video. I'm working on grinding the bevels on my CNC cut 5160 steel knives, and so, I'm just going to show you a little bit of how I'm doing that. I'm using my 6-inch grinding wheel on my 2x72-inch belt grinder, and the 6-inch grinding wheel came from, the 6-inch contact wheel came from Beaumont Metalworks. It's just a really great wheel. And I'm using a 60 grit belt for the initial roughing of the bevels, and then I'm going to smooth it out with a 120, a 220, and then a Scotch-Brite. So let's get going. Now, as I'm grinding this, as I'm grinding the bevels, which I'm getting a little closer to doing, I'm making sure to quench it pretty frequently, because this blade is already heat treated. It's hardened and tempered to around 55 or so on the Rockwell C scale, and I didn't temper it at a very high temperature, so if I get the blade too hot, it'll soften it up a little bit, and I just don't want that to happen. So that's part of the reason I always grind bare-handed, so I can tell whenever the blade is getting too hot, so I can avoid overheating it and breaking the temper. It's something that some people might not want to do, but it's something that I like to do because it helps me keep a little bit more control over exactly what temperature these things reach. When I'm grinding them, if they get over maybe 200 degrees, I feel it pretty quick and I can quench it. I mean, it won't really cause any problems until it gets to about 400, 450, but it never reaches that point if I can actually hold it. So, time to get back to grinding. thought I'd mention that if you're wondering about the muffled voice, it's because I have my respirator on, and I'm just lifting it up so I can actually talk a little bit more legibly. But I've gotten the bevels on the knife mostly ground. There's a fairly thin edge, maybe about a 1/16 of an inch or so, most of the way across. It's a little thicker at the tip, but that's what I'm looking for. It's going to be a really stout puncturing tip. And now I'm going to actually take off this sharp edge on the back here and then round it out. And I'm going to take a little bit more material off here, so this edge is a little bit thinner, but not a whole lot more. And then I'll move on to the 120, the 220, and then the Scotch-Brite. And I thought I'd mention that the only real disadvantage that I've ever found about grinding barehanded is not so much the bumping the belt and skinning yourself a little bit, but it's the fact that right now it's about maybe 40 degrees or less out. Well, actually, the thermostat says it's 30 degrees outside, so it's probably about 40 degrees in here, and I'm just really cold, and my hands are starting to lose a little bit of feeling, but whatever, I'll live. Alrighty, we're good on the 60 grit, so it's time to change to the 120 grit. now for 220 actually. Very similar looking to the 60 grit, but it's much finer. Now for the Scotch-Brite. It looks really coarse, but it actually produces very fine lines. And really, I did all of my profiling and material removal with the 60 grit. The 120, 220, and Scotch-Brite belts are basically just taking out the deeper surface scratches from the 60 grit and smoothing out the steel itself. So they're not really removing any extra material, but they're just improving the finish and the look of it, and the feel. Now, I could go to an even finer Scotch-Brite belt. I do have a finer Scotch-Brite belt, but I don't really feel like using it right now. Because usually that one Scotch-Brite belt gives me a very nice finish. I really like the way this Scotch-Brite finish looks. It's very smooth. It feels great. It's just really nice and satiny. And it's kind of reflective-ish. You can see some general shapes reflected, but it doesn't really catch like a mirror image, which I really like, because I like a sort of scratched, abrasive... Oh, I can actually see my breath out here. Wow. I wonder if you can see that on camera. But, basically, it's just... I just really like this satin kind of finish. More than I like mirror finishes or acid etch finishes or really any other kind of finish. I just like this shiny silver steel look. It's really my favorite finish of any kind of finish. And that's the kind of finish I put on my knives, unless someone asks for and pays for something else. But, and it also helps a little bit to disguise the scratches that will inevitably be given to it during use. And it's very easy to touch up. I mean, to get out scratches or clean it up, I can just give it a quick pass on the Scotch-Brite belt, and it's looking as good as new again. But, next up on these will be putting hilts on them and sharpening them, and then making sheaths for them, and then they'll be off to the people to whom they will belong, who will be my former classmates and my teacher in my machine tool class, because these would not have been possible without them, and this would not have really been possible without them, and it's just kind of a thank you to them. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and do good work, and have a great day.